Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Personal Branding Secrets. We've got an amazing guest for you today, and we're covering an amazing topic, to be completely honest with you. It's one that I was super excited about. It was suggested to me by her through LinkedIn, and I'm always open for suggestions. I love this, and I think it's going to bring some serious value. So we've got Mira. Mira is an expert on female leadership and gender diversity. She also has a great deal of experience in engineering and technology. So that's quite a broad range of topics. She started her career as an engineer, specializing in helping historical buildings to stand safe. She's always had a passion for career coaching and helping women get the jobs they deserve and getting paid properly for it as well. After she got her PhD in structural engineering and working for many years in commercial, non-profit and governmental sectors, she realized that a big, bold truth. Even when the number of girls and boys is equal during their study period, the moment you start to look at it in the higher corporate or academic ladder, then there are much less women than there are men. That might still be the case. It is still the case. You can tell me off for changing that there. It is still the case. Much less women than men across the board. Therefore, during the COVID-19 pandemic, which if you are watching this now, that's happening. If you're watching this post through the circle, then that's a terrible pandemic. Then she decided to leave her corporate job to actively help women get more influence in their own careers and in the world in general. Her heart believes that the world will be a better place for everyone when women lead more in the negotiation process, create national policies and corporate strategies, or they decide on research funding and other things. That's a lot of stuff. That's really well written. I love that. If you want to, with all of this stuff, you'll be able to find the links to all of her courses and things as well. I'm sure she's going to talk about them at the end of the show. But let's bring Mira in. 3, 2, 1. Hello. How are you?
Hi. Hello, Ash. Hello to all people that are watching this live or recorded. I'm very happy to be with you today.
Super excited to have you on. Like super, super excited. It's very early. And I was like, yes, this is like the first guest ones I've had early, so I love it. I absolutely love it. So that's a very impressive intro and quite a the fact you have a PhD is pretty cool. Anyone who has PhDs, I love it, and any of my friends who've got them, I'm like super jealous. But also that's quite a big topic, and I know that we want to talk today. The topic that you came on was you want to talk about how to deal with gender bias with building a personal brand. And I know we're going to dive deep into that a little bit, but in your own words, I'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself. And obviously I've just introduced you there, but tell me a little bit in a couple of minutes, kind of, a bit of your backstory. I know, and then like why obviously in your own words, without me reading it off a bit of paper, why you actually have done this and what motivates you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Ash. So as you mentioned, I started my career as an engineer and worked for more than 10 years in different organizations all around Europe. So I worked at the university in the non-commercial sector, for the government, and also for really commercial parties. And what I realized all this time and in all kinds of organizations is that there are not so many women at the top. So I was really intrigued with this fact, and I started to read about it. But I also attended a course which is called Stratego for Women, and was given by the company of which I'm today a co-owner and a senior partner. And for me personally, that was an eye-opener. I thought, well, why no one tells us these things when we are much younger, and during our studies, for example. But then this opportunity came last year, and the company was looking for a senior partner. So I started to do 2 jobs, for about a year. And what is the better moment to start second career than in pandemics? So I was doing that for about a year, and in January this year, I said, well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave my corporate job and I'm going to go full time for this. And it's been quite a success, I have to admit. I'm very busy nowadays.
I love it. I love to hear that though, because I think you're not alone when it comes to these kind of pandemic jobs where, and it seems to be, I know it was the case with me, I worked in finance, and then it was like when the pandemic struck, it was like, it was a weird jolt. And I think it'd be interesting to hear just a little bit on that. Is like, for me, it was a jolt of kind of like, wow, like life is quite fragile. Life is very like, whoa. And I'm not fully living it the way I want to live it. So maybe, and I probably have I can serve people better doing this. And as in what I do now. And that, I don't think the pandemic had such awful things, but if it hadn't have come, I don't think I would have ended up doing this. Is that a similar thing for yourself? It was like, it just kind of was the motivational driving force that made it happen.
Yes, well, my core motivation is always the same. In my engineering job, that was helping people to live in safe buildings. And now it is helping people to have the career that they deserve and having a better world. So my core values are always the same. It is then just a matter of how I am putting into practice.
Yeah.
And this is the part that I have decided at this moment, probably triggered by the pandemic, of course.
Yeah, I think it's a really valuable cause as well. It's a real valuable cause, and it's very I don't mean on trend, but it's very much spearheaded at the moment. And I think that's why I was very excited when you suggested it to me to talk about it. I was like, yeah, definitely, like 100%. Like, I love anything like this because it's very. I have a guy called Mark Taccio on, who's a behavioral economist, who came in and talked about how behavioral economics is being used and stuff. And it's stuff that I myself don't know. So, so to have experts, the idea of interviewing the experts is to have experts on to talk about it. So,
yeah,
obviously with the topic being how to deal with gender bias while building your personal brand, could you give us, and could you give my listeners and watchers, people here, a bit of an overview of what you actually mean by that and how you would summarize that up? Because I think a lot of people might hear that. I know that with everything, they might hear that and go, okay, that's cool. I don't really know what it is. Like as in what you're trying to mean by it. So so we know that we're going to be dealing from a place of like clarity. Can you just clarify that for my listeners and watchers so that we know where we're going to be going deep in the questions?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. So first, to say what is gender bias, because there are many people that are actually not aware of that. Gender bias is something that we all have. It is unconscious. It starts when we are very little. The first time when the baby is born, and then the first time that the baby sees the bottle and gets the food from the bottle, a kind of link is made in your brain. And every next time that the baby sees the bottle, the baby is going to think, oh, I'm going to get some food. And every next time that such a connection is repeated, the connection is in our brain is deeper and deeper. It is kind of a wood. Imagine that our brain is a wood without paths inside when we are born. But the first time when the baby gets the food and thinks, oh, I'm going to get some food now, if the baby sees milk, that is the moment when the first path is made through the woods. And our brain gets more than 1 million information in 1 second. And our brain wants to process fast this information, and to make judgment. And how our brain does that? Well, using the paths that have been made in the past and links that have been made in the past. And that also keeps us safe sometimes. So imagine Ash yourself, for example. You went for a vacation. You are in the middle of nowhere in a wood. You are in a nice wooden cottage. In the morning, you wake up, you open your door, and you see a polar bear. So what are you going to do? Are you going to think a little bit about him?
No, you're going to run.
You're going to run. You're going to closely shut your door in a split of a second, right? So that is the way how bias actually keeps us safe, and it's good that we have it. But once we start judging about people and making conclusions about their performance, that is the dangerous part. And of course, I was triggered by your workshop, which I was happy to join, where you spoke about 5 core parts of personal brand. And thank you so much for that one.
My pleasure. You were great having you on. You're saying so many things, by the way. I'm writing so many notes because keep going, because I've got so many things in my own life that I need to dive into you with, and I'll do it on here. So keep going.
That's good. So I was triggered by that, because there, a very important topic that you were speaking is about that personal brand is a repetition. You get something and that's repetition. So if I see you now, Ash, and I see all these kind of your fonts and colors, the way how you are dressed, that is stuck into my mind, which is great for your visibility, for your marketing, but it can be quite dangerous for other people. I'm going to give you another practical example. So close your eyes.
Yeah.
And let's imagine, I'm going to do it with you. So let's imagine you are going to the airport, you are entering a plane, and while you are searching for your seat, you see a captain of the plane going to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. You have a nice flight. There is the flight assistant that comes to offer you some drinks, and then you are landing. So you landed in Milan, in Italy, and you are going outside of the plane, heading to a restaurant because you're quite hungry. You come to the table and you see a couple. They are having their anniversary. They are having a celebration of their anniversary. After that, you're going to your hotel because tomorrow you're going to give a TED Talk in Milan. Okay, now open your eyes. Yeah. So for you and all of your listeners, can you tell me, did you imagine a female captain of the plane?
No.
Did you imagine a male flight assistant?
No.
Did you imagine a black gay couple celebrating their anniversary?
Do you know, I imagined a gay couple, but not a black couple. But I'm from a performing arts background. So, and also I could kind of feel, and I tell you what, on that, I imagined it because I felt myself pushing myself to imagine it. Because that's where I would say I could feel it in my head going, what I felt myself do, this is so interesting, is I felt myself go, I felt like older couple, I thought my parents, so like man, woman, and then what I felt myself doing was going, there could be there's other variants of that though. And so then I thought of gay men, but I didn't think of lesbians or anything like that. I didn't think of any of that. I just thought it's just crazy. But I started to make myself aware. That was the only one. I wasn't aware of the flight attendant. And that's clever. As soon as you said that, but I wasn't aware of that I could feel myself with that. And I think because I'm from performing arts, so I grew up a little bit more within that environment. So I was like, no.
It is amazing what you're saying. And you got it really right. Our system one is like, okay, it's our parents, for example, maybe, and maybe they're men or women. But the moment what you said, it really takes psychological and physical effort for us to think, well, can it be something else? And I love your example. And this is what really bias in general is, and particularly my focus on gender bias is, instead of going for that system one and making judgments, let's see, is there something else, is there something different that we want to think about? Yeah. So this is the basics.
It's super, super, super powerful. I'll tell you why. That is an amazing thing, and I could feel myself doing it completely. The stuff you're saying though is hugely resonating for a number of reasons. First one is I said about, I had Mark Pataccio, is my other friend with the PhD. He is a behavioral economist, and we talk about heuristics and biases all the time. And it was the bear. So that's what he said about the bear. He says, it'll take you longer. If your brain takes longer to calculate the damage that the bear is going to do to you, you're already dead. And that's what he said. So that's why we have these heuristic, your heuristic pathways in your brain that make you do those things. So you're saying that was like, oh, it all clicks. Something you said though, I have a newbornish baby. He's 12. So I'm recording this. He's 12 weeks old. This week, that is an incredible thing, having such a young child and being into like neuroscience and all that, because that's my absolute passion, behavioral psychology. Watching them act and change and move is really interesting. Something that you said, which has been the forefront of mine and my wife's discussion all week, is that she breastfeeds, and he's now 12 weeks, which means that his neurological pathways is just starting to kind of connect. He's less like a larva form and starting to be quite aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And she's with him all the time. Obviously, I'm with him. I'm at work, but I'm in and out because I work from home. And if he's with her, he's starting to see her as food. And I can say, and this is what when you were saying, like how it starts at such a young age. Like, it was never what I thought you were going to say, but it's what we've been speaking about all week, is that if he's with me, he stops crying because he knows there's no food. And so when you look at that, actually, that's building in these these biases that are already starting to relate in such a young thing, like such a young child. And you can see it, like naturally, like this week, he's crying when my wife holds him. He wants food, but he doesn't want food, but he thinks he wants food. And then as soon as I hold him, he shuts up and he's like, oh, and he's fine. And so it's insane. When you said that, I was thinking, this is mad. And it's so true because it does program you. It programs you.
Yes. And what is really important, Ash, to realize that you have a lot of influence and you can be a lot of in charge of these connections. And that is, I think, very important to realize as young parent also. Now, I have 3 very young kids. My oldest is 4 years old and I have twins. They are almost 3 years old. So they're very young. And the other day we were reading a book and there were these puppies in the book. And my son said, well, mommy, why some of the puppies are wearing the red and some of the puppies are wearing the blue? And of course, my first thought was, well, because the ones that are wearing the red, of course, they are females. And the ones that are wearing the blue, they are males. But consciously, I thought, well, stop. What am I going to answer? So I said, well, Mariano, that's his name, Mariano, it is because some of them decided to wear red that day and some of them decided to wear blue that day.
Because that's truth. Because that would be the truth. I'm wearing red right now and that's not, you look at it like that. You are wearing a blue teal color and I'm wearing red. And that doesn't have anything to do with gender. As you say, the right is that we go to those signs in our head this is super, super interesting because because obviously, as you know myself, with personal branding, it's all about using these heuristics and these biases to your advantage to make people memorize you.
Yes,
and so it's really important for my listeners to understand and people watching this to understand, like, this is not just woo-woo stuff. This stuff happens. Like it's happening around us every single day.
Exactly. And what is really interesting to talk about at this point is what is crucial for women, because that is also my focus. So what I would like to raise awareness about and to draw the attention to is likability bias.
Yeah.
So that is one of the types of gender bias, and it is quite difficult for women out there, because likability bias means that a lot of people expect from women to be nice, but they also expect from women to be more assertive.
Yeah.
So when a woman is much nicer, they can then say, well, she's quite nice, but I'm not sure how competent she is. But then on the other side, if she's only assertive, they would say, well, she's too ambitious, a bitch, or these kind of things. So for women out there, when they are making their personal brand, of course, you are an expert on that, and I'm sure that you are giving them great advices. It is really important to think about the likability bias and that they bring both of these things with them.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. In fact, I would not only, like, I think that's very, very important. It's all, so with mine, it's all about positioning. I was saying to my wife, like, everything I do is just about positioning. It's about getting you so that you are the positioned as that. And as you said, I think that especially for women, men get it as well in certain, like, it's really odd for me because when I was in performing arts, being a straight man I was a minority. So like I would get it. So it massively opened my eyes to like what people day to day, like women and things. I was like, whoa, like this is really, really crazy because people would see me as like the jock. That was it. They get old, Ash is just a jock and he's this and he's that. And there's so much more. to me than just those things. In fact, and I'm not anything like those things, but because of the biases that those people had got, I think that that's very important. You're so right, because you see this for personal branding. If you look at like women in business, I think it's a shame because they do get pigeonholed. We're going to talk about it in my workshop about the pigeonhole effect. You're very right. They're either a bitch or they're and they're not, but if they're assertive, they're a bitch, and they're like playing in a man's world. None of the stuff I believe in, but it's the, or they're nice and they're sweet. And I think
Yes.
you're very right. It's about being both. You have to be both. I think you have to be both in
Yes.
life in general, because no one's one thing, are they?
Yes, what practice shows is that women get much more reflection and performance review on the way how they behave.
Yeah.
Like she's a team player, she's hard worker, while on the other hand, men get a lot more of, he's high scoring, his projects are rocking, and these kind of things. So women have often to what is called prove it again. And they have to do that a lot of times. So it is very important for women, and I say that always to women that I coach, is make track of your records, of your achievements, of what you did, of your success, and have it at your hand, so that you can bring it up into discussion. Because still nowadays, women have to prove their competences, and they are hired because of what they did, not because of their potential in most of the cases.
100%, like 100. I can say I know. My brain is going a million. I love this type of stuff. My brain goes like a million miles an hour and stuff, because I worked in finance, and before I worked in finance, I was in property. And coming from, like I said, I again, but heuristics. Like I grew up in a dance school, so my brain. My mum's a dance teacher, so I grew up with women. Women were my friends more than men. Like I just grew up around. It was quite interesting because I grew up around dancers, singers, actors. What that did though was quite interesting, which was really opening for me, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts, is that when I went into the real world, as opposed to, because I went from there into performing arts, into acting, when I went into the real world, which was my first job as an estate agent, I was about 21, 22. It was really weird to see how because I didn't see it. I was, I was very naive. I would hear people say like, I've never sexualized women in my brain at all. Like it's just not my thing, because I was, but again, it makes sense because I grew up in an environment where we were just all together, and the ratio was me and my mate Albert, and then 10 girls, and that was because no boys did what we did at the time. And when I went into like the real work, so when I'd hear a lot of the stuff what you were saying now, I think that's not true. That's not true. Like, that's not true. Like, and then I'd hear a lot of people, friends of mine who are gay, for example. You talked about and they'd be like, there's a lot of prejudice and homophobia, and I was like, well, there isn't. I think they're making it up because I don't see it. Like and I was like, I think they're making it up. And then I joined a job. I was like 21, 22, and I went and got a job in just near London as an estate agent, and I had a very quick awakening to what you're talking about, which was like, there were only, I won't name names because obviously this is now gets quite a lot of traction, and bless them, but like the manager would hire like guys because of for example, he would never have had a woman as an estate agent, as a high level estate agent.
Yeah.
His thing, he said, was the only reason why he would employ a woman is because if she was attractive enough, they'd win more business. And I remember thinking, wow, like thinking like, oh my gosh, like how the hell is that? Like shockingly caveman. And yet it's not though, is it? It seems to be like that. So they're still like that.
Yes,
it rises up the rank in the corporate. What I found with that company was, as I rose through that company, it's one of the reasons why I left, because my opinions were not very liked. Obviously, I would voice my opinions around it, and I would notice that as I thought it was like, okay, that's just going to be the lower level to just idiots. But as I started to go through the company and the corporate environment, and they're a big corporate company, I started to realize that like all of them believed that way. It's systemic. It was built into the system. And it was quite scary. So it's a big deal what you guys are doing. I think it's a very true thing. I think people don't bring enough, talk about it enough, and when they do, people belittle it.
Yes, I really appreciate your own experience that you have just shared with the audience, also because I get a lot of comments, and I have to say that some of them come from women also, which are in the top positions. And they say, well, these things about gender diversity and gender equality, that's so in the past. But the research and data on the practice, for example, last year's McKinsey report about the woman in the workplace, they showed that the reality is still like that. So that still women are not promoted at the same rate as men at their first management position. And that is the crucial problem nowadays in the pipeline. And what you said is also really true. People don't talk about it in public.
Yeah.
One of my and our core trainings is called the unwritten rules.
Yeah.
And we talk about what are these unwritten rules that are valid in companies and that no one talks about. And more even important, no one tells women about it. In most of the cases, these rules were unconsciously set because what you said, it's a company, it was historically founded by men, it was fit to this preferred masculine working style, and unconsciously it goes like that.
Yeah.
So in most of the cases,
seed, isn't it? Is you're planting a seed, that seed grows, and by that point, by the time it becomes a problem, the problem isn't now. That's what I think myself. Like the problem with that company, the problem wasn't now. The problem was that all of the top maybe 20 people in a company of 900 employees, the top 20 all started together in the company 40 years ago or 30 years ago with very rah macho male tendencies, and it was all very like the stories they would say would be very like and it was you'd hire this secretary for this. It was all very like that. The problem is as they grew up, as they got bigger and more powerful, their outward views would be they would make them more politically correct, but behind closed doors those views were just as bad if not worse because they now have more power. So it was like do as I say and not as I do, like the comments on what one of my friends was working with us, and she would be constantly told about that she couldn't, she wasn't wearing appropriate attire to work, or it was ridiculous. Like, it was ridiculous. I don't know. I could moan about this. Is like I get myself in a soapbox with this. I've got to be careful because I'll go off and moan and moan and moan. So how do people fix that? How do and obviously all of this relates to personal branding. People who listen to this, you might think, well, how does this relate to personal branding? Every single bit of it does, because if you are a man and you're building your personal brand, you don't want to build a personal brand so that someone like myself is talking about you, because these people all have personal brands in my brain and I'm talking about them, and they have been male chauvinistic pigs in my head. So you won't want people to think that about you. And if you're a woman, you want to make sure that if you can, realize that you can control these things and make sure you're putting the best foot forward to make sure that you don't end up in that trap 6 years down the line because you've accidentally positioned yourself as one thing and not another. So how do you do that? What, as an expert, Mira, what would you say? What do you do?
I think both sides can do a lot of good things. If we speak about men and making their personal brand strategy, I think that we are all aware of the new era of inclusive leadership. Yeah. And that means showing empathy and showing both your masculine and feminine side, because we all have both. No matter of which gender we are, we have a mix of both. And then it is a matter of which situation we are dealing with, which one of these we want to show. But the nowadays trend, it is towards inclusive leadership, and that means show both. If we talk about women and their personal brand, they should be aware that there is an effect of gender bias and how people will see that. And maybe with these small tricks, and small points of attention, which don't change you, that's still you. It just makes you more personal, more you. And then people will not think, yeah, it's a businesswoman, or yeah, it's a mother, but they will think it's Mira, or it's Jane, and that is a personal brand by itself, a person entire. Of course, again, for women, the same inclusive leadership, meaning both feminine and masculine qualities, and helping also other people to thrive.
I think that's really, 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 really invaluable. So it's really funny. So you talk about, I don't know, you probably do know, probably know in your topic, the gender marketing. So there's, so I know a woman who's called Kate, and she's like a gender marketing specialist in the UK. And we spent time with her, and she talked about the utopian brain versus, so not actually, she says, I don't like the term gender marketing because it isn't really gender marketing. It's masculine or feminine mind as opposed to the actual person. And we found it really interesting because she said that people get very, very angry and aggressive about it. But she was talking about the utopian brain versus like the achievement brain. And it was really interesting because you talk about how we have both. And obviously more primarily, we spent time with Kate, me and my wife, and our house dynamic is really strange. People, if they look at it, like from the outside looking in, I'm like a bald guy covered in tattoos, very ex-bodybuilder, very masculine looking man. And the truth is, I actually have more of a utopian brain. I am very much more in my, if we're on a spectrum, I'm more on a feminine side of the way I think, feel, and act. I'm a very high empath. And that's whereas my wife is a beautiful woman, and from an outside, she looks like some Greek goddess. And yet, if you actually got to know, she does really well. She's very achievement brain, tasks, things, very, very. And the two of us, if she was to run a business, she'd be 10 times better than I would be. And that was really interesting. I think that's something that I like, just in my own personal experience, was when we spent time with Kate. And it wasn't like, I think we were just at an event and everyone else was kind of like, just, oh, that's really cool. But I was like, I'm really interested in this stuff. I'm always interested in how the brain works. And it made things make sense, because what it did, and it changed our entire dynamic. And this was for people who are listening, this is, I'm a big advocate of showing, like, live by example, was that it gave me and my wife permission to be like, actually, I prefer to do this type of stuff and you prefer to do that type of stuff. And our gender roles have told us. So for example, in our house, my wife does all the handiwork. She hangs all the shelves. She fixes all the cars because that's what she loves to do. I hate it. And I was doing it because I thought I had to do it because that's the male role. And that's what I mean, is that when you start to break down these barriers, you start to go, she stopped seeing me as, or he's the man, and I stopped seeing her. It was just, she's Freddie and I'm Ash, and I like to do this and she likes to do that. And that has led to an incredibly happy relationship, but two, it seeps into everything else, because then I'm quite happy to talk to you about it. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool, because that's what it is. Because it doesn't make me any less of a man. It doesn't make her any less of a woman. And I think, and because of that, she's hugely competent and did really well in her job because she wasn't bothered. So it's interesting hearing you talk about it.
Yes, and I think that you're giving a wonderful example to your child, because now your child will have a new kind of connections in the brain and not be thinking anymore, well, mom, she's doing only the house cleaning, and dad, he's doing only car. But a new kind of connection is made, and that is beautiful. And you are going towards the system too, which is gender bias free.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we'd like. So what little, for I've got my stuff here to make sure I do it properly. So what, like, tips, if you were to give, so in regards to like personal branding, because I'm looking at the time as well, I could chat to you about this, Mira, for ages, like ages and ages. So what 3 tips, if we think about personal brand specifically, what 3 tips could you give, the top 3 tips for building a personal brand and using this kind of gender bias, and as, because I think as a woman, I think that's actually super, super important to be aware of. And actually something that I might have to think about adding into my stuff, of like potentially putting them your way, because I think it's a very important thing, is that it's a whole nother layer on top of the ecosystem that we spoke about in the workshop, really. What top 3 tips would you say? I mean, you said stuff about characters and stuff before, and it's you. And so what would be your top 3 tips for women to avoid gender bias in their personal brand?
So the first tip would be, think about how your personal brand affects other people, how they see you. The second one would be, think of how you can help other women to build their personal brand. Because only this way we can all thrive and rise together. And the third one is, think of which unwritten rules are playing in your organization and start talking about them publicly.
That's 3 very, very good points. Very good. I think they're very specific to that. And actually, I think you could make some change with it, definitely. So if people want to connect with you, Mira, where can they go? And I know you've got courses and you've got everything like that. So this is the shameless plug. Feel free to, if they want to connect with you, if they want to work with you, if they're listening to this and resonating with this, where can they go and what should they do?
Yes, definitely connect with me and follow me on LinkedIn. Follow our YouTube channel where you can see a lot of our videos. Contact me, of course, for all kinds of career in company programs, which we do all over the world, both online and in person. And of course, career coaching. That is something that I also enjoy very much to do.
Love it. That's brilliant. I'll make sure that all the links are in the description. I've got them here anyway, so I'll make sure all of them are there, guys. Thank you so much, Mira, for coming on. I would highly, highly recommend, guys, that you follow her. She, it's brilliant. What you've just said there has really got us 8 o'clock or 8:30 when we started this. My brain is spinning. It's brilliant, actually, because it's made me, I'm excited for the rest of the day because it kickstarts it. So it's highly, highly recommend that people follow you. And I'd love to have you back on the show again in a couple of months' time. If you ever have any of the topics you want to cover, just let me know how relevant, because I'm always looking for guests, and especially someone like yourself, because I don't have enough women on the show. I'm very open about that. I don't have enough women on the show. I've had a few of my women friends have said it's a bit of a dude fest. So absolutely, I'd love to have you on the show more. It'd be great.
Thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure, and I hope to see you again soon.
Perfect. I'll just run the outro.
That I hardly recognise who I am now from the work that I've done with him.
And he really understood what it was that my business required in order to start taking it to the next level.
Ash has given me the basic knowledge of content creation, allowing me to feel comfortable on camera.
You're wanting someone to help you with your business, and especially personal branding. Ash will help. Ash can help. He's done wonders for me in my business.
It was absolutely awesome. I came away with so much knowledge that I'm ready just to take on the world.
I recommend joining Ash Borland's Personal Branding Mastery Program if you want to grow your business, generate more sales, or just aspire to be social media famous.